Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of This Month in Irish History. I'm Dan Murphy. With me always is our senior editor here at Blue and Gold Illustrated, Lou Somogyi. Today we're going back in 35 years in time, and so it's almost draft day here in 2014, but the 1979 draft day was May 3rd, and it was a big one for Notre Dame, and especially for Joe Montana, their quarterback.
Yeah, Notre Dame was coming off the 77 national title. The previous year they had 9 players drafted, 3 of the first 11 with Ken McAfee, Ross Browner, and Luther Bradley. And then in 79 they had 10 players drafted. No one in the first round, but Dave Huffman and Bob Golick in the second. And then with the 82nd pick of the NFL draft, Joe Montana. Amazing story there that goes all back to it. San Francisco 49ers were coming off back-to-back 2-14 seasons. They were the worst team in the NFL. And that year in 79, they had actually traded away their first-round draft pick so they could have O.J. Simpson in the backfield. And he ended up playing only 1 year. His knees were already getting bad there. And it was a way to attract crowds because he originally played at, I believe, San Francisco Community College. He was from that area. Mm-hmm. So right off the bat, there were just issues with the 49ers. But yet, when I was looking over, like, where would be a best place for Joe to go where he might be able to start right away, I picked San Francisco right away because it's like, hey, he's got his favorite receiver from the national champions, Ken McAfee, there. He's actually living in California with his girlfriend at the time. And what happened was the 49ers in the second round, which would have been their first pick, were interested in a receiver, James Owens from UCLA. And they had Montana throwing to him because he was in San Francisco at the time, or no, in the LA area at the time, and Owens was from UCLA. So it's like, they had him throwing, and it's like, you know, he's not bad. We have a chance there.
Right, so I think people think of him as a national champion, and obviously all the success he had in Super Bowls with the 49ers. Was it a surprise that he went in the 82nd pick, or was that about right?
That was kind of about right. He was considered maybe around the 3rd to 5th area there. The guy that Bill Walsh, who was just hired from Stanford as the head coach of the 49ers, wanted was Phil Simms from Morehead State. Bill was tremendous at finding the hidden gems and all, like a Jerry Rice from Mississippi Valley State, but he's the guy he pegged. But once the word was out on Simms, he was, I think, picked 7th overall by the New York Giants, and Jack Thompson from Washington State was the first quarterback. The next guy that they were interested in was a guy named Steve Fuller from Clemson, and he was a first-round pick of Kansas City too. But when Bill Walsh went down to look at him at Clemson, he was just not impressed at all. But what he kept asking is, who is that guy catching the passes from Steve Fuller? Just a little-known senior there, caught only 11 passes, and I think 33 for his entire career at Clemson, named Dwight Clark. So here is Montana throwing to James Owens, and it's like, well, who's the guy throwing the ball? And then he's watching Steve Fuller. Who's that guy catching the ball?
Set up one of the most prolific passing duos.
Yeah, one of the most amazing stories. And that's what the essence of coaching is finding who fits into what you want to do. And they decided, like in the 10th round, back then they had 12 rounds, after taking Montana in the 3rd, let's take a flyer on this Dwight Clark kid in the 10th round, and rest is history. So
you mentioned they have 9 guys the year before, 10 and 79. Was that a typical number for Notre Dame back then? Nowadays, it's, you know, you get a couple in the draft nowadays.
Yeah, now
good for them.
Yeah, there were 12 rounds back then, but you know, again, you're coming off a national title season in 77. Mm-hmm. So chances are you're going to be replete with professional type football players on those kind of rosters. And if you notice more in recent years, from that 2012 team that went 12-0 during the regular season before losing in the BCS championship game, you're getting into that 7, 8, 9, and more important, you're finding more and more guys up in those first 2 rounds. You know, you had Michael Floyd and Harrison Smith in 2012 draft. Then in 13 you had Tyler Eifert, you had Manti in the 2nd round, and you know, this year now you have several guys projected: Zach Martin, Lewis Nix, maybe Stephon Tuitt in the 1st round or so, or Troy Nicholas. You might have 4 guys in the first 2 rounds. So that's when you start knowing that, okay, the development into that caliber of championship team is now beginning to take root.
4 top-tier guys this year, and probably 4 or 5 more that are sort of in the running for a later round pick from Notre Dame. A dozen guys or so at Pro Day with some pretty good talent there.
Yeah, there were 16. You were there,
Right.
actually, and I think 12 from last year's team, because there were some others like Mike Golick and
Right.
Robbie Toma from previous teams. Once you get into the double figures for Pro Day, or even getting close to the combine, as far as people being invited there, that's when you know the program is starting to get to where you want it to be.
Well, that's going to wrap things up for this month in Irish history from us for the month of May. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in June.